In order to start our gravy today, we're going to start with a simple mirepoix, which is basically just a combination of carrots, onions, and celery. The carrots we're using are these peeled baby carrots that we get at the grocery store. These came from Safeway. They're relatively inexpensive. Just makes it easier to manage. We've quartered a few onions. We've left the skins on. That's okay. The ratio of a typical mirepoix is 2 parts onion to 1 part carrot to 1 part celery. We're not going to go crazy about that. We've added some olive oil to the pan, and we're going to toss these vegetables. The last ingredient is garlic. I presume that most of you have some of these bowls of garlic that you've peeled off the big, good, giant nuggets off the outside, and there's a bunch of small, difficult ones inside to peel. We use these for for broth or chicken stock, and we also use them for this. We're just going to cut off the rooted end and throw them in with the mirepoix, and then we're going to throw in a little more olive oil, toss it to coat just so it doesn't burn, and then on to the next step. So we've coated our vegetables in this pan, and we've got our oven preheated to 400 degrees, and now we're going to work on the turkey, which is going to provide us with the basis for our stock. Alright, here we have a fresh turkey. We're going to butterfly it, take out the backbone. We're going to brine the turkey itself, but we're going to use the bones that we remove as part of our stock. This is a 15-pound turkey. We're going to serve, I think, 8 people, so this should be fine. So we're going to pull this backbone out right here. This is going to be the basis for our gravy. That starts simply by using a serrated knife, a good heavy-duty serrated knife, and essentially just cutting right through. If you find pieces of skin, you can toss them off. You're cutting through bone here, so don't be gentle. And also, in this case, we're cutting through a little bit of ice too. If you hit a block, pick a different knife up, try to find the joint. Goodness. This bird is a little more frozen than fresh, so it's going to be tough, but we're going to get it out. Alright, after much struggle, I'm able to remove the backbone, which I'm going to cut into a couple of pieces and use for the stock. So we pulled our backbone out of the turkey. We've got a couple of extra pieces that were here. We have the heart, which is a muscle, so that's okay to put in our stock. Some people like giblets in their stock. I'm not a big fan, but the heart's a muscle, so that's okay. We have the tail of the turkey. This is the neck that comes in the front end. When you buy the turkey has some organ meat at the front of it, and then you've got the neck in the back inside the cavity. So this is the neck. And then we've got our pieces of backbone. So we're good to go. We're going to stick, and by the way, notice that we've put this up sort of skin side down on top of the vegetables, and this will all roast and get nice and brown. We're going to put this into a 400-degree oven for about 30 minutes, see how it goes, and then we're going to turn the meat and flip the vegetables. What we're looking for is a real caramelization of the vegetables and the meat, because they will add so much flavor to the stock, which will be the base for our gravy. So I flipped the pieces of meat over, and I also tossed the vegetables. One of the goals we're trying to do is some of the vegetables, all the vegetables and all the meat will actually leach out some moisture. And what we want to do is have all that moisture evaporate in the oven. But also what we want to do is make sure that what we're getting here is really good cooked and browned meat. And so what I've done is I've flipped the meat, tossed the vegetables. We're going to put it in the oven for another half an hour, and then check it and see how it looks. This is all about building flavor. So you can see now how brown the turkey is. And you can also see, I hope, some bubbling at the edges of the pan. There's some fat. There's a lot of fat in the pan from the turkey, as well as some of the olive oil we tossed it in. But most of the liquid or the water has been evaporated, and you can see some of this crust, which is what's going to give us some flavor. So we're going to toss this stuff one more time, put it in the oven for just a few more minutes, and then we're going to proceed to the next step. Okay, so we've transferred all of the solids from the saute pan, and you can see a lot of brown. But more importantly, this is the saute pan. You can see a lot of the crust around the edges. We're going to deglaze this pan with some chicken broth, some store-bought chicken broth. That's okay. To bring all of those flavors into the gravy. Okay, so here's our pan that we use to roast all of our vegetables. And there's lots of crust around the edges. This is fond, that we call fond. And we're going to put about half of that in there, or fill it up about halfway. And we're going to put the spurs to it, get it boiling, and then we're going to deglaze the pan. So our stock is boiling in the saute pan, and we're scraping down the sides to deglaze the pan. And you can see how the stock has changed color. It's dark, which is really, that dark color is really all the flavor of the fond that we've released from the pan. So the base for our gravy is up to a boil. We're just going to turn it down. It's Tuesday, by the way, so we're making the gravy a considerable amount of time ahead of the time. That's because we're all about slow cooking. I'm going to turn this down to a simmer. It's 11 o'clock at night. Top on it. Let's go all night long. And then tomorrow we will strain it, and we'll have a great base for our turkey stock for our gravy. Our stock has been simmering all night long. You can see how the pieces of turkey meat have broken down. The house smells great. It smells just like Thanksgiving in here. It's a nice little prelude to tomorrow. Again, this is Wednesday morning after about 10 hours of simmering. We're going to strain off the solids into this pot. You can also see, by the way, how dark the broth is, which just means, dark means flavor. Strain this off, cover it, and then pop it in the fridge to let it cool. Our gravy has cooled overnight, and you can see there's a layer of fat that is formed on top. I guess you would call that turkey schmaltz. Just comes from the skin of the turkey. We are going to keep this because it will be the basis for the roux that we use to thicken the gravy. We'll pull that off and set it aside in a separate pan. This is going to add lots of flavor. We're heating up the fat right now, and as you can see, it's sizzling rather vigorously. That's because when we transferred the fat into this pan, there was some liquid. Some of the broth went with it, and this is basically just the liquid boiling off. We want to boil off as much of the liquid as we can so that the roux doesn't get lumpy. You can see the bubbling has started to slow down. We've had this on low heat for about 5 minutes to let the moisture evaporate, and so what we have in this pan is essentially mostly fat. So now we can turn to the job of making the roux, which will be the thickening agent for our gravy. To make the roux, we're simply going to add flour to the hot fat and cook it. It's hard to tell you exactly how much flour to add. Depends on how much fat you have. And how much stock you have to thicken. That was about a cup of flour. It's a little more. And this can be anywhere from the consistency of toothpaste to the consistency of granular sand. And the trick is to cook it at a minimum for several minutes to get the starchy flavor out of it. But you can also cook it longer if you like a more dark gravy, a browner gravy. A roux typically can go from a blonde roux, which is barely cooked, only for a scant couple of minutes, to a peanut butter color, which is what it gets, which the color it takes on after it cooks for 5 to 10 minutes, to a really dark brown roux, which is typical for gumbos. We like our gravy closer to the blonde side, so we're just going to cook this until it's just about past blonde. We've been cooking the roux for about 3 minutes, stirring occasionally, and you can see, I hope, that the consistency has changed a little bit. It's thinned out. It's become more of a liquid mass versus more clay-like. And that's an indication that you've cooked out most of the starch and you can start using it as a thickener. We're going to take it just a step further to get a little more color to it. But at this point you could add stock to it and it would work perfectly as a thickener and you'd have a nice blonde gravy. I'm not sure if you can see this in the video, but the roux has started to take on a little color. It's been cooking for about 7 minutes. You can also see that it's much more viscous in its form than it was a few minutes ago. At this point, we're going to start making the gravy, adding the hot broth. So right now we're adding hot stock. And you see that stock, once it hits the roux, thickens up all the way. We're on low heat here, by the way, and you can see how that thickens up right away, so we're going to add some more stock. And the reason we add it piecemeal is we don't want it to get lumpy. So it's not as tight as it was, but still very thick. Turn the heat up a little bit to make sure it comes up to a simmer. You have some nice consistency here. Probably the way most folks like their gravy. If you want it thinned out, add a little more stock. If you want it to thicken up a little bit, you can let this simmer over over low heat to evaporate some of the water. When you've got the consistency you like, it's when you season it. Add a little salt to taste. But that's essentially how you make a really delicious roasted turkey gravy for Thanksgiving.